years of carefully curated home movies.
I'm not wearing this thing. It's got to weigh 25 pounds.
I've missed you most of all.
Do you still recognize those beloved child stars? Or has time completely rewritten the faces you once knew? These were the kids on your lunchboxes, in your living rooms, and part of the backdrop of growing up in a simpler time. But what happened after the credits rolled, and why do some of them feel like strangers now? There was a moment when no one in the world was more famous or more unmistakable than Macaulay Culkin. He was Kevin McAllister, the kid who made booby traps into an art form and slapped aftershave onto his face like it was Shakespeare. Home Alone was lightning in a bottle, and Culkin was the spark. He had that perfect mix of wide-eyed innocence and mischievous genius, and for a few years, no holiday season could exist without his smirk on screen. But fame like that does not stay frozen in time. It grows, it stretches, it bends, and sometimes it breaks. Macaulay was everywhere. He starred in My Girl, Richie Rich, The Good Son, Uncle Buck. Studios built movies around him. Parents worried about him. Kids wanted to be him. But the higher the spotlight, the longer the shadow. By the mid-1990s, he was done. Or at least he said he was. He stepped away from acting, stepped away from everything. And when he came back, something had changed. He looked different. Not just older, different, thinner, paler, softer around the edges, harder around the eyes. The face we all remembered was still there, but it lived under layers of silence and tabloid fog. People speculated, the media circled, but Culkin, always dry, always clever, just shrugged. He had already lived the kind of life most adults could not imagine, and he was still in his 20s. Over time, Macaulay slowly came back into public view, on his terms. He started a comedy podcast, formed a band called The Pizza Underground, and began poking fun at his past rather than running from it. He became the king of unexpected cameos. He turned up in indie projects, did voiceovers, played himself with a wink and a nod. Today, Macaulay Culkin is not the boy from Home Alone anymore. He is a man who lived through the machine and walked out the other side, still standing. The child star is unrecognizable now, but not because of a bad headline or plastic surgery. Because he grew up, got quiet, and decided who he wanted to be. And somehow, that might be the most surprising twist of all. He did not get lost. He just got different. Kevin McAllister was never meant to last forever. But Macaulay Culkin, he is still here. Amanda Bynes was comedy gold before she was old enough to vote. On All That, she was fearless. A tiny whirlwind of sketch comedy energy, slipping into weird characters with more confidence than people twice her age. By the time The Amanda Show hit Nickelodeon, it was clear she was the one. The girl who could do anything, say anything, become anything. Her face was everywhere. Her voice was a punchline waiting to land, and her future seemed unstoppable. She made the leap to movies easily. Big Fat Liar, What a Girl Wants, She's the Man. Her timing was perfect. Her charm was undeniable. She made teen comedy look effortless. But behind that machine of laughs and roles was a person quickly slipping from view. Because Amanda Bynes did not just disappear, she unraveled. By her mid-20s, she was no longer the wide-eyed star we remembered. Her face changed. Her voice changed. The energy changed. The headlines shifted from casting news to court dates, rehab visits, and confusing tweets. She shaved her head, got face tattoos, spoke about voices and conspiracies. And just like that, Amanda Bynes was nearly unrecognizable, physically and emotionally. The pressure of being funny all the time, of having your identity shaped by everyone but yourself, finally crushed her. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and started a long, quiet recovery. She went to fashion school. She stepped away from the cameras. She tried to get better, not for the spotlight, but for herself. In recent years, Amanda has reappeared in brief flashes, a rare Instagram post, a statement to the press, a graduation photo. The smile is softer now. The eyes are older, but she is still there. Amanda Bynes was not just a child star. She was a one-woman sketch show who became a cultural moment, and then she vanished into something the rest of us could not laugh off. Now, she is trying to build a new life, not as the Amanda Show, but as Amanda. And maybe that is the bravest role she has ever taken on. Haley Joel Osment had the kind of face you do not forget. Big, expressive eyes, a voice that could tremble on cue, and the kind of solemn delivery that made "I See Dead People" echo through an entire decade. The Sixth Sense did not just make him a star, it made him a cinematic landmark. Critics called him a prodigy. Fans called him the future. For a while, it looked like they were right. He followed it up with AI, artificial intelligence, and pay it forward. Heavy movies, big emotions, adult-sized expectations. But like so many child actors, Haley hit the wall that no script could fix: puberty. His face changed. His voice dropped. And suddenly, the kid everyone remembered could not play the kid anymore. He tried to transition, but audiences would not let go of that ghost-seeing little boy. And when he came back years later, he looked like someone else entirely. Full beard, rounder face, no more haunting whisper. If you saw him on the street today, you would not say, "That's the kid from The Sixth Sense." You would say, "Wait, is that Haley Joel Osment?" And then Google it. But here is the twist. Haley never really stopped acting. He went to college, did theater, popped up in indie films and weird comedies. He leaned into his new look and made it work for him. Shows like Silicon Valley and The Boys let him play oddball characters far from child prodigy territory. He became that rare child star who did not vanish in scandal, but in reinvention. He changed, fully and completely, and embraced the fact that people might not recognize him anymore. Haley Joel Osment will always be remembered for that one line. But now, decades later, he is writing his own. He may not look like the boy in the haunted house, but maybe that is the point. Because sometimes the biggest surprise is not who you were. It is who you become after everyone stops watching. Jake Lloyd was supposed to be the chosen one, not just in Star Wars, but in Hollywood. When he landed the role of young Anakin Skywalker in The Phantom Menace, he became the face of one of the most anticipated movies of all time. He was only 10 years old, wide-eyed, hopeful, and suddenly thrust into the center of a pop culture storm. The expectations were massive. The pressure, even worse. And when the movie came out, it got brutal. Fans hated the performance. Critics mocked him. Kids at school bullied him. And what should have been a dream role turned into something darker. Jake Lloyd did not just become famous, he became infamous. For years, his name was tied to disappointment, like he was personally responsible for the way the prequels were received. He quit acting just a few years later. He gave interviews saying Star Wars had ruined his life. He sounded angry, exhausted, a kid who had seen too much of the spotlight and none of the warmth. And then he vanished. Years later, Jake resurfaced, but not in the way fans hoped. He had run-ins with the law, trouble with his mental health. His mother confirmed he had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He had been in and out of treatment, in and out of the headlines. And all the while, people kept asking, what happened to the kid who played Anakin? Today, Jake Lloyd lives a quiet life, far from the industry that once overwhelmed him. He is still recovering, still navigating the long road back from childhood fame. And the photos now? They are a world away from that little boy with the bowl cut and Jedi dreams. Jake Lloyd became unrecognizable not just in looks, but in legacy. His story is not one of success or redemption. It is one of survival, of what happens when a kid is handed the galaxy, and the galaxy turns its back. Brian Bonsall showed up late in Family Ties, but made it count. As Andy Keaton, he was the cute, clever little brother brought in to freshen up the show's later seasons. And it worked. Audiences loved him. He was smart, quick with a line, and gave the show a jolt of energy just when it needed it. After Family Ties, Bonsall stayed on the scene, landing roles in movies like Blank Check and making guest appearances across television. For a while, it seemed like the usual story. Child star, steady climb. But then, he disappeared. And when he reappeared, it was in mugshots. Brian Bonsall ran into legal trouble multiple times in the 2000s. Assault charges, substance issues, probation violations. It was rough. The fresh-faced Andy Keaton was gone, replaced by a young man the tabloids loved to drag through the mud. It felt like another childhood star being lost to the system. Another whatever happened to, with no good answer. But here is the twist. Brian turned it around. In recent years, he got clean, picked up a guitar, joined a punk band, built a life that was miles away from the soundstage, but far more stable. He did not want a comeback. He wanted a second chance. And the man you see today? Tattoos, longer hair, but smiling, centered, unrecognizable. Not because he fell, but because he got back up in a way few expected. Brian Bonsall may not look like the kid you remember, but the person he became might be even more impressive. Lark Voorhies was unforgettable. As Lisa Turtle on Saved by the Bell, she had it all: style, sass, and the kind of screen presence you cannot teach. She was the rich girl with a heart, the fashion icon before influencers were even a thing. Lisa was loud, smart, gorgeous, and Lark played her to perfection. She was a staple of Saturday mornings, and for a while, it seemed like she would always be on our screens. But after Saved by the Bell ended, Lark's career slowed. Guest spots here and there, a few music videos, a book, then headlines, strange interviews, social media posts, and quiet rumors about her health. By 2012, something felt off. She gave interviews that were disjointed and confusing. Fans worried. And eventually it came out. Lark had been diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. It explained the long silences, the public stumbles, and it reframed everything. Lark Voorhies became unrecognizable, not in looks, but in how people saw her. She had been struggling privately while the world kept asking why she had not made a comeback. She was fighting for clarity, for peace, for understanding, and for years she got very little of it. But Lark came forward. She told the truth. She talked about her condition, about how it felt to be excluded, even from the Saved by the Bell reboot. And slowly, the narrative changed. She was not a punchline. She was a person. Still here. Still healing. Lark Voorhies does not look like Lisa Turtle anymore, but she is still standing, and that is something worth seeing. Angus T. Jones was the half in 2.5 Men, the precocious kid who went from adorable wisecracker to awkward teen on one of the highest-rated sitcoms in television history. He started young, grew up on camera, and for a while seemed to be on a golden path. The show was crude, sure, but Angus gave it a heart. He was the reason parents could watch the raunch and still feel okay about it. He was funny, natural, and for a time, the highest-paid child actor in Hollywood. Then, almost overnight, he vanished. By the end of the show's run, Angus had completely turned on it. He called 2.5 Men filth in a public video, said he was being used, said the show conflicted with his new spiritual beliefs. People were shocked, not because he had doubts, but because he said it so boldly while still under contract. He stepped away from acting, walked off a career most kids would have begged for. He found religion, found discomfort in fame, found himself, or at least started trying to. Angus T. Jones became unrecognizable, not in looks, but in direction. He stopped acting altogether, grew a beard, enrolled in college, worked in tech and music behind the scenes. The kid who once made millions per episode now lived out of the spotlight, intentionally. Years later, he reappeared for the 2.5 Men finale. Quiet, reserved, changed. It was not a comeback, it was a moment. One that reminded fans how far he had traveled since those early punchlines and pizza rolls. Angus T. Jones used to be everywhere. Now he is almost nowhere, and that is exactly where he wants to be. Jodie Sweetin grew up in America's living room. As Stephanie Tanner on Full House, she had the catchphrase, the sass, and the smile that lit up TGIF. She was the middle sister, stuck between DJ's teen drama and Michelle's baby spotlight, but she never faded. Stephanie had spunk, she had timing, and Jodie gave her soul. Fans loved her, parents approved, and by the time Full House wrapped, she was more than just how rude. She was a full-fledged star. Then came the dark chapter. Jodie Sweetin struggled hard after the show ended. Addiction, rehab relapses, headlines. She talked openly later about the void she felt after the cameras stopped. The need to feel something. The way child stardom gives you a script for everything except adulthood. She experimented with meth, crack cocaine, ecstasy, alcohol, whatever numbed the silence. She once went on stage high at a Full House reunion panel, barely able to get through it. Friends and family did not recognize her, and eventually, neither did she. She wrote in her memoir that fame felt like a drug itself, and losing it made everything worse. But hitting rock bottom gave her something else: clarity. And that was when her real comeback started. Not the acting, but the honesty. And that made all the difference. She became unrecognizable, not just in looks, but in behavior. And it nearly cost her everything. But Jodie came back. She got sober, wrote a book, became an advocate. She told her story without shame and owned her mistakes. When Fuller House launched, she returned. Not as a nostalgic footnote, but as a full character. Older, stronger, sober. Jodie Sweetin is not the same person she was in the 1990s, and thank goodness for that. Today, she is a mother, a speaker, a survivor. Her face has changed. Her story has too. Stephanie Tanner grew up, and Jodie Sweetin found her way home. Noah Hathaway was the kid who made you believe in magic. In the never-ending story, he played Atreyu, the warrior boy with the headband, the grit, and the unbreakable bond with a luck dragon named Falkor. He was not just brave, he was pure. That kind of quiet, serious strength that kids rarely get to play on screen. Noah made it real. He made you care. And for a moment in the 1980s, he was the face of every childhood fantasy. Then he disappeared. Noah kept acting for a little while. Guest spots, small films, but nothing ever reached the scale of Atreyu. He stepped away, fell off the Hollywood radar. And when he reappeared, decades later, fans barely recognized him. He had changed, tattoos, a goatee, a totally different presence. Atreyu was a boy warrior, but Noah had to become a man in the real world. He opened a tattoo parlor and focused on art instead of acting. His body carried the scars of early stunt work, including spinal damage and chronic pain. He had no regrets, just a different way of living with the story. He still loved the movie, but he refused to let it define him. He once said the real fantasy was thinking fame could last forever. That kind of honesty made his story stand out. No longer a hero on a quest, just a man living truthfully. He got hurt more than once doing his own stunts. He has talked openly about the toll childhood fame took and how important it was to walk away. Today, Noah Hathaway owns a tattoo shop, teaches Muay Thai, deals with back surgeries from his stunt-heavy childhood. He was proud of his past, but he had no interest in living there. He became unrecognizable, not because of scandal or collapse, but because he grew into someone entirely separate from the boy we once knew. And that is the thing about fantasy. It never tells you what comes after. Noah Hathaway still shows up at conventions, still signs photos, but he talks more about the present than the past. Atreyu fought the nothing, and Noah Hathaway fought to become more than a memory. Mission accomplished. Tatum O'Neal was Hollywood royalty before she even knew what that meant. At just 10 years old, she won an Academy Award for her role in Paper Moon, still the youngest person to ever win an Oscar. She was quick, sharp, magnetic. On screen with her father, Ryan O'Neal, she played Addie Loggins with a kind of effortless grit and charm that critics could not ignore. She was not just a child actor, she was a force. For a moment, she looked unstoppable. But being a child star in a family full of fame is never easy. Tatum's early success came with baggage. pressure, scrutiny, and a home life riddled with dysfunction. Her relationship with her father was complicated at best. She battled addiction early, struggled with identity, and fell into a pattern many former child stars know too well: press attention for the wrong reasons instead of the right ones. She has been arrested, hospitalized, written off. And yet, she keeps getting back up. Her marriage to tennis legend John McEnroe was passionate and painful, fueled by love, but undone by addiction. Their divorce and custody battles became tabloid fodder, adding to her already heavy public image. She lost custody of her children for a time and described it as her lowest point. Still, she kept showing up for herself, even when others gave up. She did not want to be a headline. She wanted to be better. And she has spent the last few decades trying to make that happen, with honesty, with heart, with a deep hunger for healing. She has tried to reconcile with Ryan. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it did not. She tried to keep working, appeared in films, TV shows, even had a recurring role on Rescue Me. But the magic of Paper Moon cast a shadow over everything that came after. Her face changed. Her roles dried up. The industry moved on. But Tatum did not disappear. She just had to find her way back. She wrote a memoir, A Paper Life, and laid it all bare: the abuse, the addiction, the loneliness, the fight for recovery. She told the truth, and it cost her. But it also freed her. Today, Tatum O'Neal is still working on herself, still healing, still hoping for reconciliation with her family. She has appeared in reality shows, art circles, and occasional interviews, reminding people that she never stopped being talented, just human. She is unrecognizable not because she aged, not because of plastic surgery or scandal, but because the little girl in Paper Moon grew into someone who had to survive in real life, without a script, without a safety net, and that takes a different kind of strength. Ross Malinger was the kind of child actor you instantly believed. As Jonah in Sleepless in Seattle, he was more than just a cute kid. He was the emotional glue of the whole story. He asked the questions adults were afraid to. He chased love like it was the only thing worth flying cross-country for. And he somehow made it all feel honest. Opposite Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, Ross never blinked. He held his own, and for a while, it looked like the start of something big. But Ross Malinger walked away. After a few more roles, sitcoms, Disney films, some voice acting, he stepped out of the spotlight. There was no scandal, no tabloid spiral, just a quiet decision to live a different kind of life. He worked in car dealerships, sales, management, places where no one asked for autographs. He has talked about how being famous as a child was both incredible and awkward, and how leaving it behind felt like a relief. Ross never resented fame, but he did not need it. And he is okay with the fact that people still picture him on that radio call, years younger, forever curious. He became unrecognizable, not because of surgery or reinvention, but because he chose the ordinary. Ross worked in car dealerships, sales, management, totally off the grid by Hollywood standards. And when fans tried to track him down, they were often shocked to see how far he had drifted from his Sleepless in Seattle days. He still looked familiar, but not quite. The boy with the oversized flannel shirts had grown into someone you might pass in a Costco parking lot and not even notice. And that, in some strange way, made his story even more touching. He did not chase fame. He did not try to reclaim it. He let it go and chose peace. Ross Malinger once made millions of people cry from a radio booth in a romantic comedy. Now, he lives quietly, without applause. And maybe that is the happiest ending of all. Miko Hughes always looked like he knew something you did not. In Pet Sematary, he played Little Gage, the sweet toddler turned terrifying killer, with such eerie believability that audiences had nightmares for weeks. Then he turned around and stole scenes in Kindergarten Cop, shouting, "It is not a tumor!" with the kind of comic timing adult actors would envy. He had presence, energy, the face you remembered. And then, like so many others, he faded. Miko kept working into the 1990s. Small roles, guest spots, voiceovers. He showed up on Full House, Apollo 13, and even Mercury Rising with Bruce Willis. But the demand for former creepy kid roles eventually ran out, and by the time he hit his 20s, he was almost entirely off the screen. What made Miko stand out was not just talent, it was precision. Even as a kid, he could shift from sweet to sinister in a single blink. He was not just repeating lines, he was creating moments. Casting directors loved that unpredictability, but growing up meant growing out of that niche. No more tricycles, no more scalpels, just a young man trying to figure out who he was when no one was shouting action. And for Miko, that meant leaving the soundstage and stepping into a whole different scene, one filled with turntables, late-night sets, and a different kind of spotlight. What happened next was not a breakdown, it was a redirection. Miko Hughes started focusing on music, DJing, producing, experimenting. He showed up at horror conventions, leaned into his legacy, and connected with fans who still remembered him from Pet Sematary. His face had changed. His career had too, but he never disowned what made him famous. He talks openly about the weirdness of growing up with a horror film legacy, about walking into a room and hearing "sometimes dead is better" whispered at him, about the weight of fame you never asked for. Miko Hughes is unrecognizable only if you expected him to stay a haunted toddler forever. Instead, he became a low-key artist, a genre favorite, a guy who still loves what he does, even if he does it quietly. He may never headline another blockbuster, but in the world of cult classics and midnight movie marathons, Miko Hughes is still legendary, and he is okay with being remembered for something spooky, as long as he gets to be himself now. Jeremy Miller was one of the reasons Growing Pains felt so real. As Ben Seaver, he was the mischievous little brother, funny, messy, always in over his head and impossible not to like. In a show that balanced goofy charm with heartfelt life lessons, Ben was the spark. He had the energy of a kid who did not quite understand the world, but had a blast trying to. Jeremy Miller brought that to life with ease, and for a few years, he was as recognizable as any 1980s child star could be. But behind the scenes, things were not so sunny. Miller started drinking at age 4. Not as a joke, not in a scene, in real life. He was the kind of kid who could light up a room, but no one saw the shadows he carried. He has said in interviews that he drank to feel normal, to quiet something inside. Fame gave him attention, but it also gave him pressure he was not built to handle. He was smiling on camera while slowly losing himself off screen. By the time most kids were just learning to ride bikes, Jeremy Miller was learning how to hide hangovers. It is one of the darkest behind-the-scenes realities from a show built on wholesome values, and it makes his comeback all the more powerful. He has talked openly about sneaking sips of alcohol from unattended glasses at parties and how it spiraled into something more. By his early teens, he was drinking regularly, at the same time that Growing Pains was making him a household name. It is one of those stories that feels unbelievable until you hear him say it. The fame, the pressure, the emptiness, it all mixed together until the lines between acting and escaping blurred. Miller later revealed that much of his teenage years were shaped by addiction. It nearly derailed his life completely, but instead of collapsing, he fought back. In adulthood, Jeremy Miller went to rehab, got clean, and began to rebuild, not just a career, but a sense of identity. He became a spokesperson for alcohol treatment programs. He used his own story to help others, especially kids navigating addiction too early. He even returned to acting now and then, mostly indie projects, nostalgia specials, voiceover work. It was never about reclaiming the spotlight. It was about staying healthy enough to walk through life, one step at a time. Today, Jeremy Miller looks different. Older, wiser, more open. And when fans meet him at conventions or Growing Pains reunions, they are often surprised, not by how he looks, but by how candid he is. The little brother with the smart mouth turned out to be a man with a lot to say. And people are listening. Growing Pains gave us the Seavers, but real life gave Jeremy Miller a second chance, and he is still writing what comes next. Tina Yothers was not flashy. She was not the breakout. She was not the reason people tuned into Family Ties, but she was the reason they stayed. As Jennifer Keaton, she played the youngest daughter, sarcastic, grounded, the one who often saw through the chaos with a single deadpan line. In a house full of overachievers and big personalities, Jennifer was the realist. And Tina Yothers? She nailed that balance every time. Tina was not trying to be a star. She just wanted to do the work. But the spotlight came anyway, and then it faded, just as fast. After Family Ties ended, Tina tried to keep acting, but roles were hard to come by. She faced the same problem a lot of child stars do, being too recognizable and too typecast at the same time. The industry did not know what to do with her once Jennifer Keaton was off the air, so Tina took control. She formed a rock band, dyed her hair black, stepped away from acting, and dove into music with her group Jaded. It was not about fame, it was about finding her voice. And she did. Tina also embraced a quieter, more grounded life. She married, had kids, appeared in a few reality shows and interviews, but never chased the Hollywood machine again. She knew what it looked like, and she did not want to go back. What makes her story different is that she never flamed out. She just changed lanes. She still appears at nostalgia conventions, still gives great interviews, and still speaks honestly about what it was like to grow up on screen, and then grow up for real. Tina Yothers may not be on your screen anymore, but she is still around, living her life, telling her story, on her terms. And maybe that is the most Jennifer Keaton ending of all. Danielle Fishel will always be Topanga. You cannot hear the name without thinking of that wild hair, that quick wit, that weird, wonderful energy that lit up Boy Meets World. At first, she was a side character, a hippie, a foil, a punchline. Then she became something else entirely, Corey's love, the girl who grew up on screen and made every kid watching believe in awkward, incredible, lifelong love. Danielle Fishel brought Topanga to life with more depth than the show probably expected. But after the final bell rang, her journey took a few surprising turns. Danielle struggled, quietly. The fame had a cost. She dealt with body image issues, industry pressure, and the usual confusion that comes with outgrowing a character the world still sees you as. She acted, she hosted, she faded. And then, years later, she came back. Not just to acting, but to directing, producing, and telling her own stories. She reappeared on Girl Meets World, this time as Topanga the mom, and she made it work. She was older, more grounded, but still full of that same spark. Behind the scenes, she stepped into a new phase of her career. She directed episodes, worked behind the camera, took control. She also became a vocal advocate for parenting, women in media, and body positivity. Her voice grew stronger, her story more her own, and fans noticed. Today, Danielle Fishel co-hosts a podcast with Ryder Strong and Will Friedle. They rewatch Boy Meets World, share memories, dig into what it meant and what it missed. And in doing so, they have become the best kind of nostalgic tour guides. Open, reflective, honest. Danielle is no longer Topanga. Not really. She is a mom, a filmmaker, a person who made it through child stardom with scars and strength and stories to tell. And we are lucky she is still telling them. If one of these faces brought back a memory or surprised you with where life took them, let us know in the comments, hit like if you smiled at least once, and subscribe for more stories that look back just to see how far we have all come.